And good afternoon. My name is Sarah Fossels. I serve as the board administrator for the Texas State Board of Examiners of Marriage and Family Therapists. Thank you for joining us today. This is a lunch hour event, and I'll start with asking the board members to introduce themselves.
Okay. I am Dr. Lisa Merchant, and I am the chair. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I also teach at Abilene Christian University. I think it'd be great for us just to share something else about ourselves. So I love plants. If you were to see my house, there are plants everywhere. If I could turn my living room into a conservatory, I totally would. Anyways, this is Fern behind me. She was the very first plant I ever got, and I'm kind of proud of her. So anyways, that's a little something about me. Janine.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Hi, I'm Janine Smith. I'm a member of the board, and I'm a marriage and family therapist supervisor, and also a professional counselor and supervisor with that as well. And while I love plants, I normally kill them. So I have dogs instead. And if I turn my screen just a little bit, you'd see two big dogs. Probably during this lunch hour, they'll get up and wander around because they'll want me to let them out. So you may get to see them after all. And I live in Austin, Texas. I'm so glad you guys are here.
Awesome. And I'm Daniel Parrish. I'm the public member of this board, and my trade is architecture. While I've enjoyed definitely sitting on this board, and something interesting on me, I definitely spend most of my time trying to golf, and with my twin daughters, trying to teach a 7-year-old golf and not to be frustrated is easier said than done, because we lead by example. So, but I definitely enjoy that time with my twin daughters, and I am in Dallas.
Yay. That's got to be a lesson in patience, learning how to, anyways.
For who?
Oh, maybe for both.
For everyone.
That's what we're all learning that together.
Yes. Okay. Sarah.
Daryl, do you want to introduce yourself, or Mr. Spear, or are you just monitoring?
We're just here to monitor the Q&A and help y'all out in that way.
Okay.
Yearly resources.
Thank you. So we're going to present a little briefing on what's been happening at the council and the board. Attendees are welcome to use the raise hand feature to ask a question or make a comment as soon as our little update is complete. Also, you can use the Q&A feature, not the chat feature. I believe I've turned that off, so only hosts and panelists can use that. So use the Q&A feature if you'd like to submit a question. We will not be answering questions about a pending application or a complaint. I'm going to share my screen for a second. If you need to ask a question about an application or a complaint, go to the council's website and scroll down to the Contact Us webpage. About halfway down that page, you'll see an Email Us button. Use that form and select where you want your question to go to. For example, if you have a question about a complaint, select that section. So use that form if you need to ask a question about a particular complaint. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Merchant to begin our briefing.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about is changes in the exam. So historically, what has happened is for somebody to sit for the AMFTRB exam, they have had to complete their application, pay their application fee, and then submit all the other application documents, their fingerprinting, their jurisprudence exam, their supervisory agreement form. And so they've had to submit all that before they got their exam code, which really slowed down the process so that it would take weeks or even sometimes months for applicants to get all that material back before they could then sit for the exam. So I'm really excited about this change. Basically, we have changed the rules so that applicants now, when they apply online and they pay their fee, they automatically get an email that has the exam code in it so that they can sign up for the exam whenever they are ready. And then while they are studying for the exam, taking the exam, waiting for the exam results, they can be compiling that list of things that they need for their LMFT associate and sending those things into the board so that they can get licensed as soon as they pass the exam. So I'm just really anyway, so I'm just really thrilled about that, just because it's going to speed up that process for our applicants. Janine?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I'm going to read this because I'm always wanting to make sure that I'm doing it exactly right. So I'm going to read what was provided. I want to make sure you guys all know as well how to find out information that's going on with the board. So on February the 1st, the council approved the MFT board's recommendation. The council, meaning the BHAC council, approved the MFT board's recommendation to publish the rule changes requiring all the requirements for continuing education. We've made a few changes to that. And the staff is now following the procedures and preparing to submit this proposed rule. When Sarah did that, she just blocked my screen.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I will stop.
Hang on just a second. They sent the proposed rule package to the Texas Secretary of State for publication in the Texas Register. Any kind of rule changes that are happening in government go to the Texas Register, and those are published, and they have to be published for a certain amount of time. So now go ahead, Sarah, and share your screen where you can see the MFT board's board news webpage. And there's it sends email updates. So if you will register, then it'll send email updates so that you can know exactly what's happening, and it'll come across to your email. See where it says email updates? So you want to go in and register for the email list. You'll be clicking what you want on that and then submit it. And then any kind of updates that the board has done in rules, you won't have to go to the Texas Register to look at it. It will just automatically come to you. And Mr. Parrish, I'll let you take the next update.
I think you're muted.
I think you're muted, Daniel.
That would help. I'm so sorry about that.
All right.
No, I have a little one running around and it's so used to putting things on mute. So just to make sure. Okay. But no, we're talking about the next update would be about the licenses. Many licenses have made their payment online for renewal, but not completed the required fingerprinting process. Staff may not renew the license before the statutory required fingerprint-based FBI and DPS reports are received and reviewed. The council provides online license verification to check the status of the license. And we'll show you that shortly. Please know, rules found in Title 22 of the Texas Administrative Code include, but may not be limited to those displayed. And Sarah, if you could display those, and I'll read those two rules. All right, those two rules are that licensee status, A, active status. Any licensee with a license on an active status may practice pursuant to that license, subject to any restrictions imposed by the council. Active status is the only status in which a licensee may engage in the practice of the licensee's respective profession. C, delinquent status. A licensee who fails to renew a license for any reason when required is considered to be on delinquent status. Any license delinquent for more than 12 consecutive months shall expire. A licensee may not engage in the practice of the licensee's respective profession under a delinquent status. The council may sanction a delinquent licensee for violation of its rules. And then the next statute is 882.40, criminal history, backgrounds, and checks. A licensee who was not required to undergo a fingerprint-based criminal history record check as a conditional of licensure may undergo a fingerprint-based criminal history check if directed by the council as a condition for renewal of license. A licensee may fulfill all other requirements, but a report must be received by the council from the state of Texas Department of Public Safety and Federal Bureau of Investigation before a license will be renewed. And those are the two updates on the license part. And we'll
Awesome.
now
Thank you.
go to our frequently asked questions.
Yeah, thanks. I always get questions about the fingerprinting. I'm kind of happy that we're doing this because that's just another step to help protect the public. So I'm happy we're doing it. I know it's a pain if you haven't done it yet. I'm going through the same thing myself because my license is up for renewal this year. So I can empathize, but I think it's very well needed. So the staff, which that would be Sarah heading us up, we receive a number of inquiries each week concerning teletherapy. And obviously it's because teletherapy is advancing faster than sometimes our rules are. But I want to make sure you guys all know a Texas LMFT associate license only authorizes the associate to provide services while the associate is under the supervision of a Texas LMFT supervisor and while the associate is physically in Texas. And you only can provide services to a client who's also physically in Texas at the time the services are received. And in the same instance, a Texas LMFT license with a supervisor status only allows your supervisor to supervise the associate's practice that complies with conditions just noted that we just talked about. It's not authorized to, LMFT's license with a supervisor status is not authorized to supervise an associate's teletherapy that's provided to a client who is physically outside the state of Texas at the time the services are received. And the same thing, the holder of a Texas LMFT license with supervisor status is not authorized to supervise an associate's teletherapy that's provided while the associate's outside, regardless of Texas, regardless of the location of the client. So everybody's got to be actually physically in the state of Texas, basically. If your associate has accrued supervised experience in another jurisdiction, that associate may be required to show proof of complying with the Texas non-Texas jurisdiction laws and rules, including those for licensure and supervised experience. Texas, we can't advise you of other jurisdiction laws and their rules. You have to contact that other jurisdiction and make sure that you are adhering to all those. And if you're not sure, you need to contact their professional legal counsel in the other jurisdiction to make sure that you're compliant. There's really no need for me to read this. Sarah's going to put this up so you guys can see it, where the compliance is for 882.36 and 801.58. Sarah, if you want to share the screen, I'm not going to read it out loud because it's long and you guys can also see it. But if you have questions, you can go to those two numbers, 882.36, that's your compliance, and 801.58, that's your technology assisted services. Back to you, Lisa.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhat related to that is that sometimes we will get questions about if an LMFT associate, like who they have to be supervised by. An LMFT associate has to be supervised, a Texas LMFT associate has to be supervised by a Texas LMFT supervisor. So they can't be supervised by an out-of-state supervisor. They can't be supervised by somebody who is maybe just an AMFT approved supervisor. They have to be a Texas LMFT supervisor. We also, an LMFT associate can also not be supervised by an LPC supervisor. It has to be an LMFT supervisor in Texas.
All right, almost make that same mistake twice. All right. No, but the staff also receives a number of inquiries each week asking about legal advice and ethical dilemmas. But we encourage, please seek professional legal counsel and consult with an experienced LMFT supervisor as appropriate. Staff may not be able to provide any legal advice, but staff may not interpret any laws or rules. You know, staff may not speak for the council or the board or predict how the council or board may act in any particular case. We advise you to obtain your own attorney, and your own attorney may advise you concerning your particular situation, along with the laws and rules that may apply. staff may not pre-approve or conduct or any action that you may take.
Okay, and the last thing before we get to the Q&A where you guys can ask us some questions is just about pre-approval of requirements. Sometimes applicants will maybe send the board, will send staff questions about, will this course count, or will this program count, or will these CEUs count? And staff can't pre-approve any of that. So really, you just have to read the rules, use your best judgment, and then whenever you apply, that's whenever staff can then evaluate that course or that program or whatever it is you're asking for. That's when they can evaluate it and see if it meets our requirements. And I'll just say, well, okay, maybe I shouldn't say, I don't know, Daryl, you can tell me to be quiet. But like, I know that, I'll be honest, there's times where I run into this where it's been frustrating or annoying, you know, maybe with other, you know, as the program director at ACU, there's times I want to be like, is this class going to work or not work? And, you know, I can't ask the board to pre-approve it. Like, I just have to put the class together using my best judgment and wait for my applicants, you know, wait for my students to graduate and apply. And so anyway, so I understand that the rules change, laws change, things change all the time. And so we can't be just pre-approving programs or courses or CEU certificates or any of those things. So.
And I have a late breaking announcement to make. I wanted to shout out to Brenda Skiff and thank her for her work on the rule books. They've just been updated. If you go to the council's homepage and down to Statutes and Rules and the quick links on the right-hand side, you can see the 4 rule books, one for each of the professions. And they've just been updated. You can see here the date of the update. So rules that were effective on February 27th are now in this consolidated rule book. It's got a nifty search feature. You just do Control F and search for what you need to find. So we went through the rules pretty quickly a moment ago, and you may not have captured all of the numbers and where they were, but you can search for the information in the rule book that's provided. So I just wanted to point that out to everyone. So if at this time, if you'd like to raise your hand and ask a question, I haven't been monitoring the Q&A function, but Mr. Spear, is there any common questions that you might want to go over real quickly what the answer is and get those out of the way?
Well, we just got our first question like 1 second ago, so
Oh, okay.
we haven't had any really.
Then I'll go to an attendee. I have Stephen, it looks like Faisuk. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. And can you unmute and let us know your question? Are you there, Mr. Faisuk? Stephen? Do you have a question? I see you're unmuted. Okay. I'm going to go on to the caller because they can't use a raise hand feature. Caller, do you have a question for the board members?
*6 to unmute yourself if you're on the phone.
This is a 713 area code. Caller, do you have a question? Okay. And it looks like Stephen's lowered his hand, so. One thing I was going to show everyone, if you wanted to know what kind of rules are in the works, you may be familiar with the MFT board recommends a rule change, and then the council reviews and approves that rule change. So if you go to the council's homepage and to the meeting dates and agendas for the council on the right-hand side at the quick link, you can scroll down to the last meeting of the council, and there's public meeting materials in there under February 1st, which includes rule changes that were proposed or adopted by the council on February 1st. I won't open the document here because it takes a long time to load, but again, that's a PDF. It's rather large. And you can search that for, if you just put 801 dot in the search function, you'll get the MFT rules in the results. Stephen, are you there? Do you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I feel like I'm on Mars. Wonderful. First of all you guys are great. And I've enjoyed seeing you all. That's not the question. But I do have one. I have kind of been turned off by political stuff going on. And before I renewed this period, I left because it got too weird in Central Texas near Fort Hood, and I was working with mental health. Because of COVID and not being able to trust with all the political shenanigans, I'm holding off from renewing during this period. I am active till August 2023. But before then, I will apply for inactive status for the period of 2023 to 2025 until I can set something up and be accessible. Right now, everything's by teletherapy, and I don't trust that either. So I went into the web, I opened up forms. There is no form that says inactive status, or am I reading it wrong?
So I can show you on the website from the council's homepage. You have the quick links on the right-hand side.
Okay.
Go to the How to User Guides webpage and scroll down a little bit. And we have a How to Request Inactive Status. And that will step you through the online process to request inactive status. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, don't disappear it yet. I'm
won't.
documenting details like remedial. Okay,
Sir,
great.
Keep in mind that this is also being recorded and will be on YouTube, so you can go back to it.
I don't do YouTube, but thank you for sharing that. But I know other people are going to probably want to know. I keep inactive status with California. Are
Okay.
you finished with me?
Unless you have any other comments or questions?
No. I've consumed enough time, but I really appreciate the all your humanity comes forward on the television part. And so I'm telling you, I've enjoyed this. It's not, bam, 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 this is the law. So, and by the way, thank you all for surviving Snowmageddon, the electrical thing, and being able to put this whole thing together as they whipped out orders to you. All your effort is not lost on people out in Never Never Land. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Stephen.
sir.
Stephen.
Barbara Corville? Oops, you went away. There you are. Miss Corville?
Hey,
Try again.
will that work?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all. I'm an LPC, and my question is about the new law that allows LPC associates to take funds for their sessions. And I'm wondering if the LMFT, if that was approved for them too, and when will it start?
It's actually always been approved for LMFTs. So LMFT associates have been able to go into private practice and accept funds for, I think, probably since the beginning of licensure back in the 1980s.
Huh, okay, I did a supervisory thing for LPC and LMFT. I was at LMFT years ago and dropped it just because I wasn't in practice at the time, and it was keeping up the dues and everything, and the hours were keeping up. So I just made the decision to stay with the LPC. But are you aware of when the LPC associate will start?
I think it's effective now. Isn't it already effective? Oh, no, not yet.
What?
Not yet.
Not
I don't
yet.
know.
And I hate to comment on it since we're not the LPC board,
Mhm.
Barbara.
Right.
I would encourage you to go to the LPC piece of the BHAC page and be able to look and follow along with there. I know it's in the works. I don't know the final date when it becomes effective, but I would encourage you to go to the BHAC website and then go to the LPC area and follow along there, and you'll be able to find out more information there.
Okay, Jean.
Was the question about the LPC associate business ownership? Is that what the
Correct.
question was?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
and
effective.
receiving funds if
That is effective.
It's effective now. Yeah.
Okay.
it went into effect. But if they're employed by like a nonprofit, are they able to receive funds and be paid higher now?
Well,
Well,
like
if they're,
I didn't find anything on the website. I admit I haven't looked in the last week or so. But right afterwards, I couldn't find anything. And so my director was asking me, and so I had signed up for this, and I guess I missed the LPC. Probably didn't have my glasses on when I did this one. So
I'm not sure I
Correct.
understand your question, Barbara, because you kind of had a two-part question. One was, has this rule for LPC associates gone into effect for them to be able to be in business? And the answer to that question was yes. Then
Okay.
I thought you had a second question, which had to do with a nonprofit. Could you restate that one again? Because that one I didn't really hear.
yes, ma'am. Maybe I didn't clarify it enough. An LPC associate that works for someone that is not in business for themselves, are they able to receive the funds just as if they were an independent?
I'm not sure I really,
Understand still?
I still don't think I understand the question fully. So you are an LPC associate, is that what you're telling me?
Oh, no, ma'am. I work for a nonprofit, and we have some LPC associates. I am an LPC supervisor.
Okay,
And my executive director was asking me to find out when that went into effect. And I know normally sometimes it takes months, but when I checked, I didn't see anything. So maybe I just need to get online and look
so
a little bit harder.
So that rule has gone into effect. It is effect now.
Okay. So
I don't know what you mean about working for somebody or not for themselves.
I mean,
well, they're employed under, in other words, our LPC associates work for the nonprofit and they go out. So they haven't been in business for themselves, but they would still stay under our umbrella. But does that change the way they can be paid? Because it does for LPCs under ours. They're not paid right now as much as LPCs are.
I mean, this rule change doesn't have like an effect on necessarily what the LPC is getting paid. I mean, if you're paying them
Right.
$20 an hour, this rule doesn't mean that you now have to pay them $30 an hour. Like you can follow
Okay.
whatever pay scheme
I think
pay scale you want.
That's set within your nonprofit,
Okay.
not with the board.
Are they able, so if they're on their own, are they able to receive insurance also? Any kind
No.
of pay?
I mean, right now, most insurance panels don't panel people who have an associate license.
Right.
I don't know, I suppose there could be an insurance panel out there that does. I just don't know it if it does exist. So I can just, speaking for LMFT associates, most LMFT associates can only accept, cash payments.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your help. Sorry if I wasn't clear. Thank you very much.
thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Are there questions in the Q&A that we need to answer, Tim?
I've been answering them through text, but we can answer them live if you want. We've got a question that says, is there any work nationally to create easier reciprocity between states for licensure or telehealth? Does Texas currently have reciprocity with any states? It is very expensive and time consuming for therapists to maintain licensure in multiple states.
Okay. Yes, I actually had somewhat of a conversation about that this morning with AMFTRB. So for those of you who don't know, AMFTRB is the, oh my gosh, now I have to remember what it stands for. Association
Of Marital and Family Regulatory Boards.
Yeah, I know the RB is regulatory boards. Basically, it's an association of all the regulatory boards like this one, from US states and from Guam. And anyways, that's been one of the things that's been on the AMFTRB's mind a lot, is how do we increase not just reciprocity, but mobility, so people moving from, across states. I think telehealth has just exacerbated this conversation, or enlightened this conversation, because now, people are wanting to see clients across state lines. So there are conversations, and we've had conversations about compacts. Compacts, though, are extremely expensive, and so it might be better perhaps to try to find ways to adjust rules so that rules can increase mobility. This actually came before the board, I don't know, probably 5 years ago. And it used to take, like, if you were licensed in another jurisdiction, you had to be licensed in that jurisdiction for 5 years before you could just easily transfer your license to Texas. And so a couple of years ago, when we were having these conversations, we felt like that was too long. So we adjusted it down to 2 years. So if you're licensed for 2 years in another jurisdiction, then it's just a lot faster and simpler to be able to get licensed here in Texas. And so there are definitely conversations about that, and they're ongoing. And I don't know that we don't know the answer, but we are having conversations about it, because we know that this is something that clients want. This is something that therapists want. And it really is probably in the best interest of our clients to be able to make these things easier. And increase access.
I can tell you that those of us that hold dual license, or the BHEC board itself, is paying a lot of attention to this, because compacts are already beginning for psychologists, counselors are working on them. So this is something that's coming up in the air, and we are beginning to address it.
Yeah.
We have a hand raised for Chad Gugas. Can you unmute and ask your question? There
I
you
was
go.
curious, the BHEC had actually done their Zoom session about a week and a half ago, roughly, and we're talking about the funds that were available. And so my question was specific to the MFT board, if there are ways that you're looking at future growth and where you're hoping to go as a board.
We're kind of, I think, right now in a place where, I think we're still kind of in a place where we're trying to figure out this whole transition with BHEC. And one of the things that I have loved about this transition is just that it frees up the board to think more about where we do want to go in the future and the things that we do want to do as processes get more streamlined, easier to, as things move faster, things move quicker. And so that's kind of been our focus since we transitioned to BHEC, is just trying to streamline processes. Janine might even want to talk some about the work of the standardization committee, which is going to try to help maybe standardize things across boards to make, again, streamline things, make things easier for staff, speed up processes. So I think that's kind of where the bulk of our energy has been most recently. One of the things that I would like to see, or that one of the trends that is happening across BHEC and across the MFT board that makes me happy, is just the engagement that we have with our licensees. And I hope that we continue to be able to engage well with our licensees and to engage well with the public. I would love to figure out ways for us to engage more with public, with clients, because that's really who one of our mission is, to protect the public. And so I would love to be able for us to engage more with the public in other ways. So those are some of the things that have been on my mind, but also just things like increasing mobility is something that we want to do as well. Yeah, I don't know. Are there other things, Janine, you can think of?
So I serve on the BHAC Council as the professional MFT representative. So I go to BHAC and represent marriage and family therapists on that piece of the council. And I'm also on the committee we're looking at standardization. Now, when you first think about that, you think, oh my gosh, no, we're going to lose the flavor. The good thing about it is, with all 4 licenses, psychology, social work, counseling, and marriage and family therapist, with all of us beginning to talk, we're able to determine what's the flavor with each. In fact, what's the individuality within each licensees? How are they different? And how do we keep that individuality and the specialness that they bring to the public? Within that, though, there are some commonalities. There's commonalities in how do we begin to take a test? How do we do jurisprudence? How do our licenses apply for a license? Just like Lisa was talking about earlier, when we had to have everything all in place before we could apply to take the exam. Other licenses didn't do that. And so it made sense. Okay, that works out better to go ahead and apply to take the test, get that code, and then fill in and turn into the board all your licensing requirements. So that's what we're looking at when we talk about standardization, not letting go of the flavor, because we fought very hard in the creation of BHAC for the ability for each license to have its own independent rulemaking authority. In other words, we get to determine what is best for our board and what is best for our marriage and family therapist. Now, I think I also heard you say the word, how do we make the growth? Something about funding and growth. Growth determines based on the amount of licensees that are coming into MFTs. So the more MFT programs stay robust in the state of Texas, then the more licensees we have and the more people we have to work with, that allows for different kinds of growth. So that's kind of how that all bubbles up. So my encouragement always is stand up for your profession, keep telling the public what is special about MFTs over other licensees. And I'm also an LPC as well, but I gear a lot more towards systemic and MFTs. So that's where I focus on. But stand up for your license. Pay attention to what your association is doing, because they're the people that can lobby for rule changes. We cannot lobby for rule changes. That's against and that's with every governmental body. We do not lobby for our own things. We have to have other means to be able to make changes. So pay attention to what your association is doing and join in with them to help with that growth. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Okay, so there is a question in the chat from Jason Martin regarding the recent AG opinion. And so I will answer that. Hang on, let me reread Jason's question to make sure I answer it and know exactly what I'm answering here. Hold on.
Go ahead and read it out loud for all the
Okay.
attendees.
It says, with the recent AG opinions redefining child abuse to include gender affirmation procedures, many LMFTs are concerned about what that may mean as mandated reporters of child abuse, especially given that mental health associations almost universally reject including gender affirmation as currently practiced in a definition of abuse. Do you have guidance for how LMFTs can honor their duty to report abuse and the ethical mandate of beneficence for transgendered clients and their families? So I think it's important to, if we look at the, well, let me just say this. So the licensing board, like we don't investigate abuse and we don't define abuse. That is other agencies handle that. This kind of question is still kind of currently being played out in the courts. It's my understanding that tomorrow there's actually going to be another hearing where they're going to decide if the injunction that has been given in one particular case, if that's going to extend to all cases, or if it's going to only continue to pertain to this one particular case. And I think it's important to also recognize the AG's opinion is just that, it's an opinion. Although his opinion can be used in court and it can be very persuasive, it doesn't change the rules or the definition of abuse. And I think that it's also important to realize that in their arguments in court, the Attorney General's office noted that their intention was not to make every single case of a youth receiving, gender affirmative care, that every single one was referred to CPS, but only those cases where a professional or somebody else actually suspected that it might be abusive. And so I think in this situation, just like in any other times that we have to report abuse, that we have to use our clinical judgment as we are making that decision. And so I think a good example of that would be like, say, when in Texas, parents can actually drink with their children. So if I wanted to have a beer with my 17-year-old this weekend, in Texas, that is not considered abuse, and I could have a beer with my 17-year-old. Sorry. It's okay, no worries. However, if I was drinking with my 17-year-old and he was consistently getting drunk and he was not going to class any longer because he was waking up hungover and he was, missing school, developing depression, having issues related to the fact that he was, getting drunk with me on the weekends, then now that becomes abuse, right? Now that would be considered something that could be reportable because there is some sort of physical or emotional or mental effect because of this behavior. So again, just like in that situation where we would have to use our clinical judgment to decide whether this is abuse or not abuse, I think in these situations, you're going to have to be able to use that same judgment. And so you're going to have to look at each individual situation and the facts of that case and use your clinical judgment to make a decision about whether this is abuse or not. And if you can't come to that decision on your own, then you would consult with colleagues or a peer. And if you still cannot make the decision, then you would probably be best to seek out a lawyer and have that conversation with them.
Hey. Okay, I think it's me. I have all my phones silent, and for some reason, all the spam calls are coming up through the computer. So I apologize.
No worries. No worries.
Thank you, Lisa, for that good thing. I wanted to answer. Were you done? I'm sorry.
Well, I did want to add one more thing about that. And this is just a related thing. And this is kind of, I don't know, one of my hot button issues, I guess. I don't know. It's just this idea that I really think as MFTs, we really do need to be aware of just what does constitute abuse and what does not. Here in Abilene, we actually have a woman from CPS who comes and does a presentation for my students every year about what is abuse and what is not abuse. And every year I learn something. And so I would encourage you in your jurisdiction, wherever you are, see if your CPS location has a professional who will come out and do that kind of training with you, because it is so enlightening, just the things that we learn. Or if you're in the Abilene area, call me up. And when I have my class, you're welcome to come and sit in on it and learn right along with my students. Because it's just, anyways, I do think that as MFTs, we need probably more training about how to distinguish what is abuse and what is not abuse. So anyways, okay, Janine.
Thanks. No, thanks. That was great. Thank you. I hope we answered Jason's question. Okay. There was another one that came up, and Tim did a great job of already answering this, but it's kind of something that we're going to be working on. So I just wanted to point it to it. Jessica Stringfield had asked, first, thank you for doing this event. It's very helpful. You're welcome. We enjoy doing it. Second, is the board seeing an increase in licensure eligible individuals working as coach in order to avoid getting licensed, especially across state lines? Tim very capably answered, BHEC does not track individuals operating as life coach, et cetera. It's an unregulated field. It's up to the legislature to determine that the field needs to be regulated. The reason why I wanted to point that out is because this has come up a couple of times through our last board meetings. So we are actually looking at developing kind of a Q&A to put on the BHEC page that would say something about what is the difference between a coach and a licensed professional? Because you are correct, there are life coaches out there that may or may not have had their license suspended or revoked. And so now they're operating as a coach. They may never have gotten a license operating as a coach. And then you have other people who have done a lot of due diligence and they're operating as a coach, but there are some differences. So I just wanted to let you know that we're looking at it and that we'll be putting a little bit of information just for the public so that they can determine what choice they would like to make, if they want to work with a coach or if they want to work with a licensed professional, and what are the reasons for it, just so they can be better informed. Back to you, Sarah.
Well, I just want to say one thing. I'm sorry about that. I don't know if y'all are seeing that in the community, like if you're seeing people who are trying to get around licensure laws by becoming a coach. And especially if you see themselves hanging their shingle out as a therapist when they're really not. I mean, like, tell us that. If you don't tell us, sometimes we don't know. And so if you're seeing an increase in people becoming coaches to avoid licensing laws, I think we'd probably appreciate knowing some of that, having that information.
I'd just like to show people, again, on the website, if you start from the homepage for the Executive Council and go to Marriage and Family Therapy link, and then down to the forms and publications. So when the board produces a publication or a guideline, it will show up here. And one of the recent ones that was posted, I think in maybe January or February, is about using social media. And so this is where any other developed guidelines will appear. And of course, if you subscribe to the email updates, you'll receive an email in your inbox notifying you of what's been posted. I don't see any more raised hands in the raised hand feature. And I don't only see them.
You only see the question from Carol Elise Thompson regarding continuing education. I would say, I guess I would have to probably defer to staff on the providing supervision one, but I mean, if you've authored a book or you've got a peer-reviewed article, or if you are a CEU presenter, then I would assume that you would just kind of submit those things as evidence. Is that right, Sarah?
That's my initial assumption, that yes, proof that that's been completed.
Link to the book, the actual journal article, I think it would be those things.
If you were presenting as part of a conference, you might include some statement from the sponsor of the conference that you prepared and presented this particular topic, that kind of thing. Mostly there's very few things that staff can accept as a self-report. So if you have a third party that validates or verifies what transpired.
In addition, for that consolidation piece, we have been working on the CEU part of that to be able to determine how many CEUs are awarded per, if you author a book, if you do a presentation at a conference, how many can you claim with that? And so those are going to be listed, if they're not already up there, as soon as they're all finalized. So you can also look at that too. And it's really super helpful.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm really excited about the CEU standardization work that your committee has been doing, Janine, because, a few years ago under Sunset, we basically kind of got rid of, I don't know, it just almost seemed like a free for all in terms of CEUs. So to have y'all kind of coming back and defining and putting names and numbers, and I don't know, just the work that you'll have done on that, I think is going to bring a lot of clarity for licensees, and it's going to help, I think, with staff who doesn't have to know, you can do this for this board, this for this board, this for this board, that if it's kind of the same across all four, I think that's just going to be so much easier. So I'm excited for those rules to be finalized.
Thank you. It's actually been fun. There
Oh,
haven't
yeah, I
been
bet.
too many blows by any means between the licensees. So that's the funnest part, I think, of all of this. And I don't know how many of you out there that are still listening as we start to finish up have followed this whole progression with BHEC. But before BHEC, the different licenses didn't communicate with each other, and sometimes pitted against each other for different laws and trying to get things passed, and didn't work in a collaborative format. And we're much stronger with all of our numbers together than just one certain license trying to do something. And so that has been such a pleasure to be part of the beginning of fighting with, because before I was on the board, I did a lot of lobbying work for MFTs, and fighting to be heard, fighting to make sure things were going to be done, and then fighting to make sure that we had an agency created for mental health, that we weren't just housed someplace else. And so I think that the result is what you guys are seeing, is that things are getting more streamlined, things are going to be easier to find, things make more sense, especially if you have dual licensure, a psychiatrist with the MFT license as well. So it just makes it so much easier for the licensees, and then of course for the public to get that help too. So.
Okay, we have a couple other questions on the Q&A. So for Faith Ray, she asked, as a CEU provider, do I submit my syllabus, certificate, and evaluation as backup documentation when renewing? No, you would not. Like, if you are a CEU provider, you wouldn't need to submit any of that information unless the board requested that you did. My understanding, then she goes on, my understanding is that it is 2 prep CEUs for 1 hour CEU. I don't know about that. And I do know that it's, again, right now, all of this is in flux. So I would not bank on that because the rules on that is changing. And then the last question she writes is, also, it is my understanding that I only submit backup documentation if audited. That is correct. So when you renew, it'll just basically ask, did you get all your hours? And you'll check yes or no, unless you're being audited. And then I think it's in red, it's marked somehow on your renewal form. It will ask you if you need to submit. So, and actually, and maybe I shouldn't talk about this again, Daryl, tell me if I just need to be quiet, but we are thinking about maybe in the future moving to some sort of like online system that would track your CEUs for you, and that would just make things a whole lot easier. But that's in the future. So,
That is in the future.
yeah.
Before the end, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sarah. I was going to answer Felicia's question.
Before the end of the hour, wanted to give the phone caller another chance in case they had a question that they wanted to ask. So caller, you're at area code 713. And is it star? I didn't write it down.
Star 69, maybe?
Star 6.
Star 6. So it's star 6 to unmute. Caller, if you have a question, go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Okay. I just wanted to give them another chance. So
Yeah.
that was that.
I appreciate that. And then Felicia asks, when updating from LMFT associate to LMFT, why must we resubmit practicum hours if it was already submitted previously for LMFT associate? You shouldn't have to. You should only have to submit that document once, either when you upgraded, either whenever you submitted your LMFT associate license or whenever you upgrade. So you might, if they're asking for it again.
So we've gone through a lot of changes transitioning to BHEC. And part of those changes were going from paper files and understanding that 3 boards, LPC, social work, and MFT, came over in paper files, and we're digitizing those so that we can, as well as other record retention kind of stuff. So we're not perfect. And sometimes
What?
it's true. It's
What?
true. I hate to burst your
Get it
bubble.
together, Sarah. I'm just kidding.
But
Sarah is pretty perfect. I'm just gonna say that now.
Yes.
So sometimes that piece of paper is lost. Sometimes it was scanned, but but the scan got garbled or that kind of thing. And please recognize that we serve, I can't remember the exact totals, but 25,000, so more than 25,000 social workers,
It's
more than
over
26,000
60 it's
social
over-
workers, LPCs.
It's over 60,000 that came over in banker boxes.
So I'm very sorry if you had to resubmit duplicative paperwork. I do encourage you to keep your own copy when you do submit an application, and especially if you're an associate, keep that application material until you become a fully licensed LMFT, and maybe for a while after that, I'm not sure. And like I said, I'm very sorry if you had to submit that a second time. If staff is asking for it, it's not because they just want to make you jump through hoops. It's because they need it in order to give you the license. They cannot make any assumptions. They have to make sure that it's all verified. So I apologize. Thank you for your patience on that. And I hope that helps clarify.
And I'll look into it to make sure that we aren't just accidentally asking for something twice.
Thank you, Mr. Spear.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.
Sure.
So we're right up about the 1 p.m. and I don't see any other hands raised. So I'm inclined to,
Oh, hang on. We have another question in the Q&A
Okay,
from
good.
Danielle Bryant. Says, where can I go to get specifics on how our licensees will be given now once we apply for any renewal? I guess what you're referring to is like we don't do paper licensees now for your renewal. So if you need like to know if your license is active, Sarah can show you on the website, but essentially you go to the website and you go to the verify license and you click on that and you search for your name. And then it will show that your license is active and when it expires and those kinds of things.
And also right down there at the bottom, if you can just scroll up a little bit, Sarah, it'll have right there, when you go to the different things, it has a thing on there about fingerprinting. If you actually go to the MFT, so
I see
now
what you're saying.
BHEC, now you're going to go to marriage and family, and then it has fingerprint information right there.
Yeah.
And if for some reason your employer or your insurer requires a paper renewal certificate, if you go to the how-to user guides and scroll down to the bottom, there is a way to request for a small fee, a renewal card or renewal permit. And that how-to guide will then step you through the online process.
Okay. Are there any other questions before we Sorry, I live right next to a train track, and so it gets really loud here sometimes. I apologize. Are there any other questions, comments, concerns, complaints, heckling? Just kidding.
No, you're not. You meant that.
So when we close the webinar, you'll be presented with a survey. Answer the questions on that survey, and Daryl, correct me, but I believe that then the confirmation email provides the CE certificate. Is that correct?
We will send out an email based upon the report that's generated from those who complete the survey,
Okay.
awarding the CE hours.
Okay. All right. It's a little after 1. I want to thank Chair Merchant and Ms. Smith and Mr. Parrish for being our panelists today. Thank you for all the attendees for coming, and also thank you for to Director Spinks and Mr. Spear for their support and backup during this event. And with that, I will end it, and the survey should appear when you log off. Thank you very much.